Hey friends, it's your boy Nick. Today I'm going to tell you my best pieces of advice for anybody wanting to become a fursuit maker. Or heck, you might already be one, and you could still use these tips. You might have already seen my 10 tips for newer makers video, but I actually didn't script any of those tips for the other people, and those were just tips that they wanted you to know themselves. But these are ones that I personally think that everyone needs to know. And I try to include things that you don't often hear, but you will find out eventually, so without further ado, let's get into it. Number 1, understand fur is not your only option. When you think of a fursuit, immediately you assume that they're pretty much all made of fur. It's in the name. But you could not be more wrong. I've seen amazing fursuits with fleece, cosplay fabrics, and way other materials. It's definitely something to take note of is what material you actually want to use on your suits. Not only will this radically change the cost of production, but it will also completely change the look and feel of your suit. Some styles just translate better in fleece than fur, such as non-mammalian species like piñata suits or cosplay dragons and all kinds of other things. But definitely figure out what material you like using best. Number 2, you are allowed to outsource. I always hear people saying if you make a fursuit on a base, then you're not a real fursuit maker. That could not be more wrong. I used another person's pattern to make practice paws when I first got started. There are so many downloadable patterns for anything from feet paws to head bases that after you use them, the maker just wants you to credit them, that's it. But using bases and outsourced materials does not make you any less of a fursuit maker or any less valid. Number 3, practice. You're going to hear this the most because it's the most important. My first 2 suits pretty much went into the shed once they were done because they were literal garbage. There was exposed foam, not a single piece was sewn, and they really weren't even worth selling or wearing. But by my 3rd fursuit, I used completely new materials with a whole new style and outlook. I sold it and let them know that I was a newer maker, and when the buyer noted small flaws, I actually refunded them $50 just for peace of mind. But beyond that, I spent probably every day for a few months working in my room, drawing designs, making prototypes, and things that, well, long term just didn't work out. But at the time, it was the best I could do. I learned it's easiest to try out a pattern from someone else rather than starting your entire new pattern. Then you have a solid knowledge of how to actually start and how to make these things together. For instance, I tried to make a hand paw like a lot of other people I see making hand paws for the first time. We all start out this way. You basically get a glove and you cover it with foam to make beans, and then you tape up a pattern. Spoiler alert, unless you're extremely good with foam work, those will not come out even at all. At all. So beyond that, I just downloaded a Curlworks pattern, and crazy enough, it was perfect because it's a perfect pattern. And then once I was comfortable enough with that, I actually just made my own pattern. Oh, and also understand, not everything you make you have to sell. A lot of my prototypes I never sold because they genuinely just weren't worth selling. But if you do decide to sell them, you have to make sure that buyer knows what they're getting into. They have to know if there's any popped seams, they have to know if there's any holes, or if this is your first time making paws. You have to let them know that. Number 4, understand when and if you're ready to take commissions. This is something that I actually see as the hardest part and the most overlooked. Please understand, when you take a commission, you are completely at the mercy of your buyer, and any changes they want to make. Relaying information to them, giving work in progress photos, managing time correctly, offering fixes for popped seams. Taking commissions is extremely stressful because you are literally qualifying yourself as a business at that point. And please understand, you are in no way obligated to take commissions of your work. If you don't want to take commissions, whether it's just a hobby you enjoy or you only make pre-mades for your mental health, whatever, you don't have to take commissions no matter how sought after they are. Number 5, practice with low quality materials. Working with low quality materials is a point of contention in the fursuit world. It's even a point brought up a few times in my last tips video. But here are my thoughts. There are 3 times where you have the green light to work with low quality materials. Number 1, it's a personal suit that you have no intention of selling. Number 2, you're practicing by making prototypes, or you're just getting started making fursuits. Or number 3, you plan to sell it, but you're going to let the buyer know in full disclosure the materials you used are low quality. Granted, you will not be able to sell it for as much as you might have thought. That is the risk you run using certain materials. Also, keep in mind, low quality materials are not the same as bad materials. Craft fur is a low quality material because it sheds excessively and it's hard to shave without creating bald spots. Cardboard, however, is a bad material because paper products develop mold, can make you sick, and probably can only be worn once until it falls apart. But make mistakes, learn from your mistakes. I want younger and newer furries watching to realize there are going to be times where you think of a material that you really don't see anyone else using. Maybe it's craft fur that you got and it looks and feels lush at only $5 a yard, or maybe it's armature wire that's stronger than steel and you use for a moving jaw. Whatever. But you're going to use it and wonder, maybe you've stumbled on some gold mine method and maybe you're the first person to start using it. There are generally only 2 reasons why you feel this way. Number 1, either you are one of the very few people to find and hone this new method, you gain the ability to be different and showcase this difference for others, or number 2, there's a reason people aren't using that material, and either you're going to figure it out or someone will figure it out for you. Number 6, find your materials. Make a detailed list of when and where you got your materials. I can't tell you how often someone's asked me where to find a fur, and I just can't remember. Also, depending on where you live, finding certain materials can be an arduous process that costs a pretty penny for shipping. Not everywhere in the world has the same suppliers and access to materials most fursuit makers have. Do research. Where's the best place to buy materials? And on top of this, keep a record of any washing instructions that the furs come with. Your buyer is not going to know how to wash your fursuit, or if they can get their eyes wet, or if simply washing it will ruin any markings they have. You are fully responsible for relaying the information of how to wash your fursuit to them. A good way to find out is also take small swatches of the fur for your commission, wash them vigorously, and see how they fare. Wash the eyes of the fursuit, see if the paint chips, stress test your suits. Is it able to be put in a washing machine? I've made suits that you could punt across a football field, but I've also made dry brush suits that I recommended using a damp towel to clean with. These things will mean the world for your customers to have peace of mind about. Consider making a small how-to with a personalized thank you in their shipping container, or even pack a small bit of fursuit spray disinfectant with it. Number 7, pricing your fursuits. This will be a separate video in and of itself, but in general, it's a very broad spectrum of how you can approach it. In conjunction with the previous point, you want to make a price list of all the costs for your fursuit making. I personally am very generous with mine. I write everything from thread, foam, the fan, resin, any outsourced materials. This price list can be extremely helpful when it comes to pricing your suits, hunting for new materials, and price matching with other things. With that being said, of those materials, see how much it takes to make a standard fursuit for you. For instance, I'm a partial maker. I calculate the cost of my materials for making a head, paws, and a tail up to 30 inches long. In doing so, I know it costs approximately $220 for me to create a full partial with 2 fur colors, a highlight color, a fan, and so on. This is also because I try to use high quality materials such as Gorilla Glue and upholstery thread rather than all-purpose thread and standard glue sticks. Because of this, I'm able to see the minimum I need to charge to make a profit. And from there, I add the costs of my skills and the amount of time I take and whatever extra charges come with it. Number 8, make a terms of service. Basic things you should cover are return policies, a down payment, payment plan options, any discounts they receive from buying your products, pre-made character rights, shipping, who pays for it, cancellation options, and what happens if it's canceled. A terms of service should also be included in your invoice. PayPal gives the options to send invoice, which is basically an itemized bill of everything that your customer is paying for. Always, and I mean always, make an invoice. It is so much easier to prove anything if you ever need it because it logs their payments or lack thereof, along with any rules that they've agreed to. You look professional and have a complete proof of any guidelines if you ever need them for any reason. Even if the cost is $80, the invoice can save you from a potential scam. Number 9, understand customer service. You will be dealing with seasoned fursuit veterans and people who've bought dozens of fursuits and know what quality looks like. But you'll also be dealing with newer fursuiters who just turned 18 and are just now able to get a fursuit for the first time. Always be patient and never lose your cool on a customer no matter what they throw at you. You will get some people who will throw wild accusations out of nowhere. Just handle them as though they were yelling at you while a whole room was watching this go down. Never stoop to their level and always be kind and courteous. Number 10, be different. You're going to see a million all gray dogs with a white underbelly and white paws. But how many spotted lemurs have you seen? How many bug suits have you seen? How many green and purple fluffy snakes have you ever seen? It's a lot easier to do something original than to try and improve on something that's already there. A good rule of thumb is this. Pick a random animal. Like, I mean random. Not a dog, not a coyote, not a wolf, not a dragon, not a cat. A random animal. Like a sea bunny, a snail, a anteater, a flying fish. And basically look up that animal as a fursuit on Google. If you can only find less than like 4 results and they're repeated throughout, then you can probably assume there's not a lot of those fursuits around. That's the best place to start, at least for me. And I mean, heck, if you want to do all dogs or all dragons or have some kind of specialized species, there's no problem with that. My thought is this. I would so much sooner run to a scorpion fursuit than a dog, no matter who the maker was. So that's just kind of my opinion on things. But that is my great long list for you. I'm sorry if this sounded really boring, but I genuinely wanted to pull advice from the heart and be as genuine as I could with this advice, because these were things that I learned over the last 2 years that honestly I feel like everyone needs to know, because no one told me these things. I just kind of looked around and was like, man, I could use the terms of service. But all in all, I just don't want to sound like I'm talking at you. I want to sound like I'm talking to you. Does that make sense? But in any case, there's no way I could make an all-inclusive list, but in general, these are just great rules of thumb to get started in the fursuit world. If you have some tips yourself, or if any of these really resonated with you, please let me know in the comments. I, of course, want to thank my amazing patrons. They're the ones who actually read over my script, and they made sure that everything was all cute, and all my T's were crossed, and my I's were dotted, and they made me confident in making this video. I'm considering making a 10 tips for general furry artists with another big collab, but I don't know. Would you guys want to see that? Would you not? But all in all, thank you so much for watching this far. You're amazing. I love you. You're beautiful. And I hope you have an amazing day. But as always, this is Nick. And remember, keep it simple. Get started in the fursuit world. If you have some tips yourself, or if any of these really resonated with you, please let me know in the comments. I, of course, want to thank my amazing patrons. They're the ones who actually read over my script, and they made sure that everything was all cute, and all my T's were crossed, and my I's were dotted, and they made me confident in making this video. I'm considering making a 10 tips for general furry artists with another big collab, but I don't know. Would you guys want to see that? Would you not? But all in all, thank you so much for watching this far. You're amazing. I love you. You're beautiful. And I hope you have an amazing day. But as always, this is Nick.